What is up, everybody? It is IHE TV here, and I want to talk about the Toronto International Film Festival 2023 that I got back from a few days ago as of me recording this audio. I just kind of want to roughly dribble out my spiel, my rough opinions on these 15 movies right here. I'm going to start with what I consider the worst and build up to the best, and just kind of give some, stream of consciousness, thoughts, ramblings, opinions, initial impressions on a bunch of these movies. I guess the caveat being it was like 15 movies over the course of like a week, so my memory, it will be all over the place with some of these things, so it's not going to be the most in-depth reviews possible. I definitely want to see some of these films again, in order to develop my thoughts more. But yeah, let's just see what comes out from this. So let's start with the worst piece of trash I saw at the festival. Movie madness. It was Harmony Korine's latest, Aggro Dr1ft. Yep. The name kind of gives the impression, and the poster as well, actually, kind of shows you what it is bringing to the table here. But before the film itself, Harmony Korine came on stage to the Midnight Madness showing, and he was talking about, he sheepishly introduced the film, saying that he's like sick of films and they're so many of them are trash, and it was quite like a nihilistic way to introduce the movie. And he basically prefaced it by saying that he doesn't even really think it is a movie, and I would completely agree with him on that. It's a troll. I felt like I was being trolled for an hour and 20 minutes. It was an absolute, I mean, it was an insult. And I've only dabbled in Harmony Korine's other stuff, but I think this is the furthest he's pushed it as in terms of that kind of he's just trolling you. He's messing with you. What, you could make Aggro Dr1ft in an afternoon. You could get together with some friends and make this dumb nonsense in an evening. Just get wasted enough. Get yourself a thermal camera and just say whatever comes to your mind. Just get stoned, and you think you have this like this philosophical deep thought process going on, but then if you like record it and listen back, it's like the dumbest thing you've ever heard. It's basically that stretched to an hour and 20 minutes. I actually can't believe, like, bless the editor, whoever tried to edit this into something, because my god. So in the Q&A afterwards, he was describing it as a liquid narrative. Horrifying term, meaningless term. He was simultaneously saying that it's not a movie. It was just kind of all improvised, all just nonsense, to be honest. And then I guess to try and give it some credence, some structure, this liquid narrative concept. There really is no plot. There's no story. The style, as you can see from the poster, it was all shot with thermal imaging cameras. The entire movie. I've never experienced a film that actually is painful to watch, like, not in an exaggerated hyperbolic way. Like, it hurts after a while. Like it's such a visual bombardment. And just the way it's structured, this repetitive dialogue, it doesn't really have, I don't know, it just all seems so improvised. Like, for example, the funniest scene in the movie for me was, you can see that Travis Scott is credited, and he has a small cameo. There's a scene where he's kind of sat there, the thermal imaging, and he's clearly like wasted. He's like high or drunk or something. I don't know. That's just how he comes across sometimes, anyway. But the dialogue, it's just kind of repeating words or phrases again and again. So he's like, "Wake up, do it. Go to sleep, do it." And then you just kind of repeat that, and it's like very memey, overlaying a bunch of like AI visuals, which is, I don't know, it's supposed to be, I guess, a statement on the automation of art and or this kind of thing, but it's also just incredibly annoying, looks like garbage, is abrasive in a way that isn't really fun to watch. Just something nihilistic about it that was, I don't know, kind of irritating to me. This music that they got droning on and on is so aggravating. It's so horrifying to listen to. Honestly, if the music wasn't quite as intensely aggravating, maybe I could have found a bit more humor with this, but it's just impossible to take seriously. It's impossible to take seriously, and anyone who enjoys this movie will be saying everything I've said this past 5 minutes, but as a positive, because, I mean, after all I've just said right now, it was probably the most fun I had at a screening. The film is absolute trash, but the movie madness, like, experience, people laughing, people screaming, hooting and hollering, it was crazy. And that the experience was a lot of fun, and a lot of like movie fans know that sometimes the more crazy or wacky or bad a film can actually be the most fun experience. Like Adam YMS told me like the Hollywood films have been screened at the Midnight Movie Madness at TIFF before, and I'd honestly prefer that because actually there's an earnest quality to those that is just inherently more respectable than this whatever Aggro Drift is. But it was definitely the conversation piece of the festival. It was the most fun movie to talk about. Everyone was like, so how about that Aggro Drift, huh? What a load of nonsense that was, huh? Like, every single person had an extreme reaction to Aggro Drift, and I guess, yeah, that nihilism, I know a lot of people are drawn to that kind of thing, but for me, I guess I just don't agree with the thesis. Like, I don't think films now are worse than they've ever been. I feel like there are countless great films every year, just like there are countless awful films every year. Like, there's been so much good stuff this year, so I just don't agree with this whole approach. I call it an endurance movie. I think that's kind of its purpose, is like you're wasted with your friends at 2 a.m, and it's like, how much of Aggro Drift can we sit through? You know, it's a meme, utterly unwatchable. People were leaving the screening by the droves. There was like a group of 5 people, in the row in front of me. They made it 15-20 minutes. They were like laughing at it for that time. Then they just all agreed to just walk out, and yeah, it was bleeding viewers the more time was passing, and the humor of it was coming in waves. Like, the first, I don't know, 20-25 minutes was really funny, because it was like, are you serious? Are you actually bringing this to the table right now? Is this really what you're trying to show the world, you absolute troll? But then all of a sudden, like, it would stop being funny, but then it would come back round on itself and start bringing the humor back, with like Travis Scott coming in, or like just a ridiculous visual, or big CG demon, or some dumb thing. Yeah, so awful film, but really memorable experience, and it's a really fun film to talk about. So there is some value in that, but it's all outside of the film. So I really can't give the film much credit for that, because I'm being dead serious when I say that you and a couple friends could make Aggro Drift in an evening. So next up is The Settlers, a pretty short little kind of contemporary western set in, I guess, in South America, over these border disputes that were happening post-Boer War. You have all these different armies clashing over territories, about these colonizers all coming together, and it kind of boils down into, I don't know, it's a fun premise of this Chilean mixed race guy with a Scottish soldier who, he fought in the Boer War, and a gunslinger from America. So, yeah, this mishmashed crew right here. I do really like this premise. I like my westerns. I've been playing some of the missions of Red Dead Redemption 2, so this kind of setup is on my mind, including the colonizer angle, the abusing the natives, and yeah, all this kind of stuff. The problem is just kind of how inconsistent this film is. Like, the first act is quite good. It sets the scene very well. A lot of beautiful landscape shots and an interesting premise off the bat. The characters are interesting. The dynamic is kind of interesting. There's a lot of tension inherently to what they're doing. They're trying to set up these fences and all these like factions going against each other. Love all that stuff. Really great music as well. But the more it goes on, the more I found it struggled with its tone, because it's listed here as what is it? A crime drama history western. But it also has, I don't know, a lot of comedy in it, weirdly. So it'll have these comedic moments that work quite well, juxtaposed against these quite extreme depictions of, I don't know, sexual violence. Well, the poster kind of is an indication of some of the physical violence you see, but it doesn't really feel in service of much. There's a lot of kind of shock value, a lot of subversions in a way that just kind of deflate the way the story is crescendoing. I don't know if it needed to be longer. Maybe if this was a 2.5-hour thing and they kind of explored these main three characters a bit more, because the premise of this main character, this mixed race guy, as the protagonist, he's like an interesting character. You want to learn more about him. You want to see some kind of arc explored there. And while it does have quite a good ending scene, that's after an extremely awkward, truncated time jump that kind of hastily wraps up these two characters in a way that's like, oh, so you've been setting all this up, and it's like you're just ripping it. You're ripping this whole thing and just skipping over it and introducing like the British Army. They basically, the story is basically them traveling across the wilderness, stumbling into various different groups and either killing them, maiming them, or trying to get on with them. And it's just, to be honest, I've tried to record this segment a few times, but I just don't have that much to say about this movie. It just kind of went in one ear out the other. Pardon the pun here, but some kind of surprisingly mixed performances too, which is an issue when most of the movie is centered on these three. There are some kind of shouting matches and scenes where they're supposed to be getting in each other's faces and getting all aggro that just weren't being sold to me. Yeah, but again, love that setting. Love the emptiness of the film and exploring that stuff. But I felt like it was throwing out a lot of ideas, but it never came together in a way that made me ever want to recommend this or especially watch this again. Which is a shame, because look how short it is, an hour 37. That's like perfect runtime for a movie in my mind, but just didn't work overall. Next up we have Robot Dreams. Robot Dreams, a Spanish animated cute little film for some reason. I don't know, the more I think about this, the less I actually kind of like it, to be honest. Let's start with the good, actually, right? It's beautiful. The animation is exceptionally good. Some really impressive walk cycles and character designs, and there's just a lot of attention to detail and the mise en scene, the colors, it's very well made, all of it. But again, I'm just kind of like, why did this have to be a movie? Why? It's an hour 42, and it's kind of shown you all it has to offer within 20 minutes, maybe half an hour. Like, the plot is a lonely dog gets a robot off an ad that he sees on TV and then takes it to the beach, has the time of his life. But then the robot gets stranded on the beach, and then the dog, he's too weak to carry him home, so then it just becomes this cycle of the robot like trapped on this beach having dreams, hence the name Robot Dreams. And each one is like a reference to something or like a montage. It feels like a lot of kind of cute little vignettes. That just feels like, why is this not like a Lava Island style like Netflix series of like 5 episodes, all these little vignettes? It never justified why it needed to be a film, and especially one with that runtime. I was bored to tears at a certain point. Just like, what? Okay, this is cute and everything, and it's just like, man, I wish this animation was in service of an actual story, something I could get engaged with some characters, and there's no dialogue, it's all visual storytelling, and there's a lot of great sound work, a great visual design, a lot of effort put into this, but man, it just didn't connect with me outside of the odd, that was cute, you know? Like, it just wasn't doing anything for me. It's just so repetitive. I gotta say, like, it's got like a miserable ending as well. It's supposed to be this like love letter to New York City, which on its own, like, I've never been to New York, so that's not going to do anything for me. And even then, in the group we went to go see it with, there was actually someone from New York who found that to also be kind of an empty, hollow love letter as well. Like, it just, I don't know, I think it's based off a comic strip or something like this, but it just really forgettable to me. So caveat for this one, Evil Does Not Exist, Japanese film. There were a bunch of Japanese films I saw actually at the festival, which is by no means a bad film. There's plenty of excellent Japanese films, but this one, I don't know if that one really was in the bucket of great Japanese films in my mind. But yeah, caveat, didn't see the last 10-15 minutes of this movie because I had to rush off to another screening, so that's why I haven't rated it on Letterboxd, but I've seen most of the film. Very short, an hour 46, but it doesn't feel short. The first act of the movie is pretty insufferable. It's a guy like in the forest doing his routine, and we'll get to a movie later, which was about like a man and his routine, which I absolutely adored, but not here. It wasn't really working for me, but which is a shame because I think the premise is really good. It's about like a rural town, close to Tokyo, just a small town of people living their lives, living off the land. They know how to clean the water. They know how to hunt and live off the land and appreciate where they're living. But then, this company from Tokyo wants to gentrify, wants to set up a glamping resort, which would cause issues to the local population. It would pollute the water, yada, yada, yada. And that tension of, the big city kind of looking for places to develop, to make money, basically. That is, I don't know, it's a globally true thing that's happening worldwide. It's definitely happening here in the UK as well. So I love that impetus for a story. I love that idea. It's just kind of, again, how it was explored, because that first 30 minutes, it's like, where is this guy? What are we doing here? And I know it's supposed to be giving you an appreciation, an impression of that natural life, of that kind of slower, more pure and untouched landscape. Is not supposed to be about anything else at that point, but like, it's just so unengaging until once the first act is over and it starts getting into this conflict with the city and the local residents, and there's like a town meeting where they're talking with the locals about this glamping plan, and all the locals are getting angry and upset and bringing up the issues of like, oh, why you can't put the sewer works here, and the septic tank and whatnot's going to infect this. And there's some good dialogue there, there's some good commentary, there's some interesting stuff going on, but it just feels so uneven. And apparently everything of note kind of happens in that last 10 to 15 minutes, according to other people from the screening I talked to that did finish it. It just wasn't coming together as a whole for me, which is unfortunate because, a lot of good ideas going on, but I was just kind of bored out of my mind. It's that typical, like, it's the indie movie stereotype, where it's like these awesome ideas, but it's just told in such an obtuse way. I just didn't feel like it had to be that way to tell this story, and I'd love to see these kind of concepts explored in a different way. Next up is Richard Linklater's latest, Hitman. I'm pretty sure I'm in the minority with this one because most people like really loved this and had a great time, and I did for the first act or so of the movie. So the premise is basically you got a dorky guy, Glenn Powell plays this dorky guy who loves birds and fixing things, and he's a teacher who all the students find lame and unattractive and boring, but he's got a side hustle as a guy who because he's all into this tech and like these mics that you can place everywhere. He sets up like an undercover sting operation, catching people who are putting out hits on people, like hence the name Hitman. And he, through certain events, winds up being an undercover agent who's the guy who's sent in with the mics on, trying to get the confessions from people who, you know, they go on the deep web, they want their wife taken out, so they put a hit out on their wife. So he's the guy who goes in with the mic and he's looking for that confession where they say, blah, 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 yeah, here's the money, go take this person out. With obviously a strong comedic slant. If any of you have seen the Richard Linklater film Bernie, it's quite a similar, not premise, but similar style in terms of a story based off an article in a newspaper and taking some creative liberties and trying to turn it into a feature film from there. Glen Powell does deliver a good performance, but it was doing that stereotypical kind of corny American comedy, romantic comedy trope of like the hottest people you've ever seen, right? And you're supposed to believe at first that he's this lame loser guy who no one really appreciates or respects, which I don't know, he's just too well camped and put together for me to believe that. I'd need someone else casted who isn't this Hollywood hunk guy to really sell that, but I don't know if that's more of an issue with me. Yeah, so as I say, the first act was humorous, it was cute. It was just kind of like a montage of him dressing up as like pretending to be different people in order to trick others into believing that he could be a hitman. So there's some inherent humor to that. There's a little bit of commentary in there about how one can the id, you know, how someone's identity, like where that comes from, what does it mean, how can you change it, can you truly change it, these kind of ideas, fun concepts. But as Richard Linklater said after the film was over in the Q&A, he was talking about how it was based on this article he read, and the first act kind of ends when the article ends, and everything past that point is made up, you know, it's fiction. And for me, that's when it kind of turned more into an expected, predictable romantic comedy. It has its moments here or there, but I was kind of bored out of my mind. It never justified that runtime to me, nearly 2 hours for this corniness, this goofiness. I do say this not really as the biggest Linklater fan. I like some of his stuff. I know the Before trilogy is supposed to be amazing, and I haven't seen that yet, but I didn't love Boyhood. I didn't love Bernie. You know, School of Rock's okay. He's definitely not my favorite director by any means, but it was just okay. I think it's broad. General audiences will love this. It's got some comedic actors you might recognize. The woman from Parks and Rec. Some other names you recognize. I wish it was more interestingly shot. In particular, it was so bland and uninteresting, especially in a lot of the dialogue where it did just kind of boil down into A/B camera, just flick between them, shot, reverse shot. Yeah. I was kind of done with this 40 minutes in. And as soon as it started turning into the love story, I just was not working for me. It was not doing anything creative or unique enough to just justify what it was doing. There's one quite good scene towards the end involving Glen Powell having to lie while he's on mic and having to convince someone, blah, 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 blah. It's like all this elaborate silliness, like goofiness. It's like pretty screwball, I think you described it in the Q&A, and it definitely is. And I don't know, screwball's not going to work for everyone, but it's like all these tropes of the romantic comedy tropes of like, there's some lie, there's some big thing that if they knew about, then everything will come falling apart. And it's like at the end of the second act, that's when the lie comes out, and then they got to have a falling out moment. It's like, yeah, a lot of this feels like plug in to the formula. And yeah, I don't think the premise was really enough to carry a feature film to me. Or maybe if you could just cut out maybe 15-20 minutes of this, it was okay. I'm not really going to be rushing back to see this anytime soon. but I think Richard Linklater fans and people less of a stick up their ass might enjoy this a bit more than me. Next up, we saw The Holdovers, a period piece set in the 70s about an uptight teacher played by Paul Giamatti, who carries the movie on his shoulders, to be honest. He does give a good performance here. Very likable, a lot of good, fun dialogue. He's got to stick up his ass. He's, judgmental. He's really hard on the kids. He's got some baggage that you kind of learn about throughout the film. And The Holdovers is referencing the period over Christmas where most of the students go away, but there are a handful left over. And Paul Giamatti has to look after the kids. And of course, they don't get on. And it's mostly about the relationship with this lead boy. What's his name? Dominic Sessa. Yeah, Alexander Payne is the director. A lot of people like his films. Again, it's not really my thing. Kind of like Linklater. Quite corny, saccharine. There's really nothing surprising or unexpected about the film. Like you can read the premise here and basically predict every single beat that's going to happen. Again, I feel like I keep saying about all these movies, man. That's going to happen for the lower ranked ones on this list. But that runtime is a bit egregious. There are a couple of subplots I feel like you could just pluck out the movie and not much would change. Yeah, broad appeal, some good memorable acting, but also some kind of bad acting in there, because there's obviously lots of kid characters who, especially in the first act, some of these young fellas who have to carry scenes, and I don't know if they quite have the chops. I don't know, it's warm, it's got heart, it's Oscar bait for sure. Anyone with like teachers in the family or teachers themselves will probably appreciate this. Like, this is the kind of film I'd recommend my mum, My mum would probably love this. I enjoyed my time with it. It was serviceable. It was fine. I wouldn't give it higher than like a 3-star on Letterboxd though. So now we're getting into the more interesting stuff that I could say I actually genuinely liked a bit more. This is Close Your Eyes, a Spanish film from a director I hadn't heard of before, but I've been recommended some other films of his. Very long. You might see the 2-hour 49 runtime there. Kind of slow cinema stylings over here. But we got a really interesting premise here about a film director who starts finding clues about a lead actor that he'd worked with decades ago, his best friend, who mysteriously vanished. So he could never finish this film he was working on. And yeah, all these years later, these clues start popping up because this woman is doing a show on TV about his disappearance, and she's finding these clues, and it starts this kind of unraveling mystery of like, where did this man go, and what's he been doing, and is he dead, is he alive, what is going on here? It is very slow, very plodding, but each individual scene is like very interesting. It's exceptionally well made. I like all the performances, some memorable characters in there. There's definitely a point in that runtime where these clues are being found and it's kind of it feels like it's building to something, but nothing is really developing. However, 10 or 15 minutes after I was feeling that, then it finally started going more to where I figured it might be going. And yeah, I wound up quite enjoying this overall, but definitely not for everyone. It's really the premise that kind of carries it more than anything. I feel like you could probably take this story and find ways to bring out more oomph from the premise, especially from the conclusion as well. I feel like there's not much to really interpret or pick at, despite the subject nature. It's quite matter of fact. It's quite a journey movie. Yeah, lots of different places, lots of different environments. Also lots of memorable scenes. But my God, it is long. It is very long. Yeah, I'm curious to check out some of the other films from this director to see if they gel with me a little bit more, connect with me, come together a little bit better. But yeah, I did actually enjoy this a fair amount. Seeing as we're talking about movies that feel like they didn't quite stick the landing, but they have a lot of interesting concepts going on, we got Memory here. As the name suggests, it's about memory. The two lead characters have the Skarsgård, one of the million Skarsgård family members, is a supporting lead who has Alzheimer's. So he obviously has memory issues. He'll forget what he's talking about halfway through a scene, and it gives him a lot of. It gives Peter Sarsgaard a lot of. I thought it was Skarsgård. Have I been saying Skarsgård this whole time? My dumbass. Okay, that's on me. I thought he was one of the Skarsgård brothers because there's so many of them and there's such a huge family, but I'm wrong. It's Sarsgaard, my mistake. Yeah, so I guess he's not one of them. He's the guy from Green Lantern. But yeah, he does deliver a good performance. Jessica Chastain kind of carries it though. She's an alcoholic who also kind of has memory issues because of, as you learn, certain traumatic events from her past that kind of trickle out in the movie and pretty traumatizing, dramatic. Nope, that's not really the kind of image I want to to go with what I was just saying. But yeah, she was the best part to me. She has some excellent scenes, very convincing performance. But kind of as I was saying about Close Your Eyes, yeah, there's, I don't know if it's part of feeding into the name memory, having this idea of like these two characters who are intertwined, and they both have these issues, and there's really no conclusion. It's kind of bittersweet. You know, there's not really any happy way this can conclude or end. So, yeah, there is kind of an empty feeling to it, but yeah, is that intentional in the same way? These characters do have inconsistent memories. They do have these struggles that are unfulfilling, that will forever affect their lives and, yeah, not come together in a way that will be satisfying for everyone. Yeah, some strange kind of questions, like technical things, not technical in terms of the filmmaking, but like, how did this person not recognize this here, and da-da-da, what is going on with this, blah, blah, blah. Little details here and there that I won't get into here because I assume most of you haven't seen this, but I'd recommend it for the Chastain performance and the dynamic between these two. There is something endearing there. There's something compelling there. It's short and sweet as well, which I always like. Yeah, just kind of muddled in what it's trying to do, but a lot of memorable scenes that have stuck in my mind, and an alright character drama. Dream Scenario, a hilarious concept movie that is about, I know it's a really good idea actually, that Nicolas Cage plays the kind of schlubby teacher, like in Hitman, except you actually believe that he's schlubby. But yeah, the name Dream Scenario is getting at the fact that this random teacher just starts showing up in people's dreams. It starts off, he's talking to his friends, and it's like, oh, I had this really weird dream where you were just there. You weren't doing anything, but you were there in my dream. And it kind of goes from there and starts becoming this worldwide phenomena where just everyone knows him because he's in everyone's dreams. Yeah, and they take that concept and they take it to the extreme places you'd want it to take this concept to it and explore it to its fullest. It's kind of like a Twilight Zone. Like, it starts off as being something quite good for him, and it's bringing a lot of positives in his life, but obviously it develops and starts untangling his life and goes to some ridiculous, hilarious places. And I'm always going on about reference humor and how it can be so lazy and lame and annoying and kind of pull you out of the film, but this had some clever, funny, inventive uses of reference humor that actually added something to the story that were genuinely funny. Nick Cage, he was at the Q&A afterwards, and the way he was talking about it kind of made it sound like he didn't understand the movie. The point is supposed to be that he's this teacher that wants to write a book, but then he starts kind of, because it's like a metaphor for, you know, fame, and it's like an influencer angle, and he's like losing himself to this almost unearned fame that he's been getting. And then in the Q&A afterwards, Nick Cage was like, he's just this guy who wants to write a book, and he's like a victim. So I don't know about that. Like, there's more going on than just that. He does deliver a very good comedic performance, but I got to admit that the audience they were bugging me, because especially in like the first act of the movie, where it was clear there's some minor humor going on with the way he's delivering just normal lines, but the way the crowd was reacting was just like they were like scream laughing at every single word Nick Cage was saying. Where it's like, are you just laughing at him because it's Nick Cage the meme, or is it like actually a funny line to you? You know, because there are a bunch of really good jokes and really funny lines, but it's like, I don't know. I guess I didn't really understand what the audience was getting out of that, but I found it to be clever, inventive. I do love me a good concept movie. The tone was really good as well. I love the way it balanced. I love when you can have the comedy and then on a dime just switch it into like the scariest thing you've ever seen, some horror, some gore, some gruesomeness. And just the whole dream setting gives you like such carte blanche to carte blanche to really get creative, and just, yeah, it gives you an excuse to have these little vignettes of like, yeah, this can be like a horror dream, this can be a comedy dream. Yeah, a lot of really memorable stuff in here. I can't wait to see this again. Apparently this director did a great film called Sick of Myself, which I need to check out. This is one to watch. There's an edginess there and a kind of macabre sickness, which I really enjoyed. Next up is Four Daughters, the first documentary here we're talking about. A mixed documentary style where, the premise is, obviously the name is indicating four daughters, but two of the daughters, for reasons that are explored in the documentary, are not available to be filmed, so they actually bring in actors to play all the characters in the movie, and they'll weave in and out based on the scene that they're retelling of their crazy lives. And yeah, just the way it's woven together is beautifully done. It's very emotionally impactful to have this family who truly have a lot of chemistry. They've lived their whole lives together, so that's something that even the best actors can struggle to replicate, and there's just something very genuine about that, something very real about it. But then, yeah, weaving in these actors who are able to fill in these spots, able to fill in the drama that is too much for some of these traumatic things to be relived or spoken about again. Because, it is a tale of radicalization. It's a tale of, abuse, betrayal. A lot of, very, very hardcore, depressing, distressing subject matter talked about here. But there is such a heart and warmthness to that presentation, and a deep sadness that comes from it as well. The last third of the movie, when it starts revealing where and why this is all gone, and kind of how there are still elements at play that have not concluded yet, and the tragedy of what has happened with this family and this generational trauma that's just being passed down, and all these expectations of these different family members based on where they are in the world, what their religious expectations of them are, and how that's clashing with their lives and how they want to live their lives, and the family drama that comes out when you put the cameras in there and weave actors in there and just have them speak candidly. It's really impactful and emotional, and I'd highly recommend this. Next is About Dry Grasses. Very thought-provoking movie, this one right here, and I'm sure this is kind of what draws your eye. The 3-hour, 17-minute runtime, and I gotta say, I'm very proud of myself. I didn't even take a pee break once. Everyone else is getting up and down. I'm here. I'm loving it. I'm enjoying myself. I guess I'm the man with the iron bladder. But the movie itself, really interesting stuff, man. This is quite a feat to be able to hold my attention for that long, to keep it interesting. It's quite unpredictable, like where it's going. It seems like at first it's maybe going to develop into sort of a The Hunt type situation. It's about a teacher at a school in just the middle of nowhere, in a remote, very cold location in Turkey. It's a Turkish film, Turkish director. And this is the lead character here. This is the teacher. It was kind of a character study based around this guy. There are only a handful of characters, maybe 4 or 5 of note, mainly a focus on only 3 or so. This dynamic between the main teacher and this woman who's well, she's also a teacher, and she's disabled in certain ways that feed into some of the discussions in the film. But I got to say, I love it when there is a focus on dialogue, and that dialogue is good. The dialogue is convincing and real, and it doesn't feel like it's just the writer talking to himself. Each character feels like a different person, and the back and forths feel like a real conversation with these themes, with these heavier subject matters woven in a way that, yeah, does feel real, convincing, but also serves a narrative purpose too. Gotta compliment the look of the film. Lots of landscape. I'm sure I was just saying about how cold it is, and all these images are like from the end sequence in Istanbul. But yeah, most of the movie is like this. They're wrapped up in layers and layers in the frozen wilderness. It kind of enhances the isolated nature of the main character, and he's quite a hopeless, miserable, feels sorry for himself, down on his luck. And a fascinating character all round. He's not a good person by any means, but the ebbs and flow of the story is fascinating, like what they explore. Lots of tea drinking as well. It's probably like 20 scenes of them serving this tea and sipping tea and just having conversations. Lots of interesting technique in here. Creative uses of portrait photography that's kind of spliced in these certain montages now and again. You got a meta fourth wall-breaking moment, which one of the more memorable points in the movie, which feel like is making a comment on this out-of-place, whistless, just going through the motions, not really thinking ahead. Main character is kind of bumbling his way through this situation. He's selfish and vindictive and needlessly cruel to his friends and students. So if excruciatingly long character studies, dialogue heavy, slow cinema movies are your kind of jam, this director, this is the first film of his I've seen, and apparently he's got lots of great examples of this, and which I'll definitely be checking out. But if that sounds up your alley, definitely check this out. This was very impressive to me. I love when a long film can justify its runtime. Getting to the end here, I did not intend this to be quite this long. This channel is supposed to be for easier to make shorter videos, but anyway, The Contestant was next. About this, there's a documentary about this just insane reality TV show from late 90s, early 2000s, pre-Big Brother, pre-The Truman Show, where the conceit is this man, Nasumi, they call him. He's put into this situation where he's stripped naked, put in a small box room with nothing but a bunch of magazines, because of course this was the magazine era. And he's tasked with only being able to live off what he can win from the competitions in magazines. And he winds up doing it for well over a year. And it's kind of the deep dive into him as a person, what drove him to that, what made him stick around, the psychological torture that he went through and the conditioning that it kind of winds up forcing him into, and then the sociopathic, psychopathic producer whose idea it was and where he takes it. And there isn't, I wouldn't want to go into details on this because the story is unbelievable. It's one of those stranger than fiction type setups where without this footage, I don't know if you'd really believe what you're seeing. But what an incredible story. Again, I felt like the odd one out because after the documentary, everyone was like, oh yeah, I've heard of this Nasumi guy. I've watched a YouTube video about this guy. So everyone seems to know about him and parts of this story. But as far as the documentary is concerned, very well made, short and sweet. Kind of delves into his life after the documentary and what he has achieved since. And you may or may not know about the way a lot of these reality TV shows from Japan have the crazy graphics and all this over-the-top nutty stuff going on, all these colors and symbols and whatever. a lot of work was put in the documentary in terms of taking a lot of those out, so the way it was presented could be a bit more candid, a bit less overtly over the top, like it was designed for the reality show. I'm sure this took a hell of a lot of work to put together, because there would have been tens and tens of hours of footage to go through, and I think it took, what do they say in the Q&A, it was something like 6 to 8 years to put together, like a long time, and it shows. It's very well made. Absolutely nuts, insane story. Concept is incredibly interesting. Just check it out. Next is Boy and Heron, Miyazaki's latest. At the time, there wasn't even a trailer out, I don't think, or maybe it dropped like a couple days before I'd seen it, so I really had no expectations. One of the talking points around this movie was the fact that the only piece of marketing was this poster. That was all. And a slight conceit that it was kind of set around World War II in some way, which got me thinking, oh, is this going to be more of like a Wind Rises type thing where the fantasy elements are not going to be involved that much, or like what is this going to be? But no, that's all definitely here. This is very much the likes of Spirited Away, Howl's Moving Castle, Mononoke. Don't think it's quite the quality of any of those. Maybe on par of Howl's Moving Castle somewhat to me. This is only on a first watch though. It's spellbindingly beautiful. Kind of goes without saying, but man, it's just incredible to watch. Like if you're a fan of animation, this like will tickle something in your brain, something silly, because just the weight everything has. There's so much like personality to the character designs, and it's like flawless. Like you're seeing some of these frames here. The denseness of like what's going on, like hundreds of creatures on the screen at once, and things I haven't seen from them before, like the opening montage is the boy running through. I won't give the context, but there's a large fire, so everything's being obscured by the heat, and it just looks stunning. And that's definitely the best part of the movie, is the visual flair of it and the creativity and unpredictable nature of it. But that's also where, I don't know, a lot of people are kind of switched off by it, because the plot feels very improvised and kind of scatterbrained. It's throwing a lot at the wall, not all of it sticks, and I know that's bothering people more than me, because I felt like the ride, the kind of Alice in Wonderland, just fish out of water craziness was like enough going on for me to keep me invested and intrigued, even with that 2-hour running time. I was never bored, but yeah, the plot is all over the place, and I'm still a bit kind of confused as to what it was trying to say overall, because yeah, there is a lot going on. The first act is only kind of sprinkling the small hints of the fantasy elements, and once it eventually delves into it, it like really goes crazy, and almost turns into these random vignettes of like the main character stumbling across a character, and then them explaining or dumping various rules to what's happening in this mad fantasy land, and there's only like a loose thread connecting it all in terms of this main character. It's very similar to Spirited Away in the sense there's something happens to a parent or the parents, and it's a young kid going through a crazy fantasy world they don't know, and interacting with all this craziness, and it gives them an excuse to explain the fish out of water nonsense that's going on. Kind of struggles with the rules. It does just feel very improvised. Like you hear about the way he kind of writes his movies, or I guess draws his movies, storyboards his movies. He just kind of starts and just sees where it goes, and that's kind of how it feels. It's more like a vibe explored more than a plot-heavy, dialogue-heavy, rules-heavy type narrative, and that will bother some more than others. It's definitely not his best or strongest, but man, I honestly can't wait to see this again. There's a lot to unpack with, like, there's a lot of fun with the way this alternate universe that this boy finds himself in. It's all these animals that have a different form, and when they go through these like Monsters Inc. doors, into our world. They return to their normal form. So there's this whole kind of humorous angle with these budgies or parakeets or whatever you want to call them. They're like a villainous force in the movie. There's a lot of good humor, but also stakes. Like there's blood, there's violence, it's not quite Mononoke level, but I felt like there was a sense of dread, or at least tension, or danger to this unknown fantasy world he found himself in. I got to appreciate and respect the creativity. I'm glad Miyazaki could get this out. He keeps, I guess, lying and saying that he's Morrisseying it, saying this is my last thing. I'm not doing anything ever again. But then he's like, I think there's already been an article saying that he's already got ideas for his next thing, but whatever. Yeah, it's definitely not at the top of his filmography, but it's also not at the bottom for me. I like the tone, I like the visuals. The main character's pretty flat. He's more just kind of like a arbiter, an excuse to get someone who doesn't know anything into a situation and have everything happen around them. He doesn't have much agency. I much prefer like the main character from Spirited Away, for example. She's a much stronger, more likable character, but I like the adventure. I like the fairy tale nature of it. Just cannot get over that animation. I really can't. Like, I could just have this on in the background and appreciate the look of it. Yeah, every frame's a painting. I'm curious how people are going to settle with this, because I know some people are really disappointed by it, but we'll see. I need to see it again. I need to let it sit. I need to unpack some of the elements. There's this kind of villain character who's got these like building blocks, and still trying to figure out what he was trying to say with that. These like precarious building blocks. Yeah, but I also don't really want to spoil anything right now. So I enjoyed my time with it. I was really glad I got to see it. I'm curious to see how people react to this. I feel like I'm a lot more lenient with these. I don't know, the way I think about film, I guess, is like a plot doesn't have to be the be-all, end-all for me. It's definitely an important pillar, and I'll criticize something if I feel like that's not the strongest part of the movie, but I feel like, you know, it's a audio-visual medium as well. So yeah, the music as well. I love the music. The music was incredible. Exactly what you'd want and expect from a Miyazaki movie. And I think that's also kind of part of the problem for people, is it's like, yeah, it's another Miyazaki movie, but to me it's more of like it's another Miyazaki movie. This is what I'm after. But that's the thing, where the plot doesn't fully come together or conclude or explore what it's throwing out there particularly well. Basically everything else is so flawlessly put together, and there are so many great scenes. Like that's always one of the litmus tests for me, is like after a movie, what were some of the great scenes, you know? What were some of the great moments of dialogue? What are some of the great action sequences or quirks or bits of editing or stylistic choices or use of color? Or there's like so much going on. I feel like I can forgive a weaker plot if it's in service of something interesting and creative, which I feel like it was. Right, the penultimate one here, Perfect Days. This was actually the first thing I saw at the festival and wound up being, my second favorite film all around. A very quaint, quiet, simple premise, just executed to perfection. I really, really enjoyed this. A very unique character as well. It's just about a guy cleaning toilets. Yeah, they were saying in the Q&A they shot it in something like 15 days, which is pretty incredible, because there's a lot of like really stunning cinematography, great lighting. It's all like very naturalistic. And yeah, as the name suggests, it's just the days of a quaint, quiet, underspoken toilet cleaner who just has his rota of toilets to clean going around. And as the days repeat, you kind of learn more about his life, his dynamic with his family, why he is the way he is, the routine he's in, and it's all kind of thematically linked by, he's always listening to tapes. He's always playing tapes in his car, from his drives to work, from his drive to get food, from yada yada. You get quite used to the pattern, the locations he knows, but the days repeat in the same way. The tapes he listens to, he has to rewind. If anyone my age remembers having a tape player and the rigmarole of doing that and the ritualistic nature of it. And there's something, really likable, genuine, understated, and emotionally effective. It does build up to an emotional crescendo, and it gives you just a sprinkling enough of a texture to, and it implies like what has been going on in this guy's life, just enough to make you understand where he is, why he is. And I was talking to Adam about these films that kind of talk to you specifically, that feel like they were almost made for you. And that was one of these to me, because this character, he is like a quiet dude. He has his routine. He's not trying to bother everyone. And I just felt like it was a unique type of character I haven't seen that much of. And he's always kind of sensitively noticing the things other people aren't looking at. He's got his old camera. He's looking up at the trees, at the way the light shines through. And that was like noted in the credits. There's like I didn't note it down at the time, but there's like a Japanese word or phrase or something that does describe that idea of the way light flickers through the leaves of a tree. Just very, quiet, sensitive. This definitely wouldn't be for everyone. Not even a Japanese director, actually, a German director, Wim Wenders, who people might know from he directed Paris, Texas. But whereas the director of Robot Dreams was saying it was like a love letter to New York, this felt much more like a love letter type movie to me. There's a scene involving overlapping shadows, which is just so poignant, such a unique, interesting, I keep saying the word beautiful, but it is a beautiful observation. And some good music in there too. Like this fellow, he's got a good library that he likes to listen to. You got your Lou Reeds in there, which they obviously play a lot. And it is such a perfect day, you know. Yeah, I really recommend this. This was excellent. Right, before we lose all my energy, we got to end, unfortunately, on the best movie probably that I saw, The Zone of Interest, Jonathan Glazer's newest movie. Super ambitious, man. Like the premise here is focusing on the Auschwitz Nazis that are like monitoring it and like planning how to, it's Auschwitz. It's just horrifying subject matter that, I don't know, presenting in movies is difficult not to sensationalize it, not to, boy with the striped pajamas it in certain ways, where it can be, saccharine, kind of over the top. And frankly, like it's kind of all been done before, we've got Schindler's List, we have these movies that have explored it in an emotional way. But this is a detached, unique, original, devastating way to present this subject matter. Very loosely based off a book of the same name, which was supposedly a fictionalized version, like it wasn't specifically set in Auschwitz. But Glazer and his team decided to focus on the infamous Rudolf Höss and their family. And the presentational style, very detached, all intentional, and it almost comes across like a documentary, almost like it's hidden cameras around the house, just kind of observing, so the audience never gets a chance to personally really connect to what is going on, and that's a very clever, intentional choice by the filmmakers to try and distance you from the family, from what is going on, and the tragedies are never focused on. It's so nonchalant, it's more like the implication is what is the horrifying part. There's just smoke in the background. There are faint sounds in the background that you hear. There are these sickening, nonchalant conversations of just these dudes sat around a table with a map, talking about magnitudes of horror that you can't even comprehend in such a understated, casual, unassuming way that really juxtaposes against what we know as the audience is happening in the background because of the setting, that really makes it a disgusting gut punch. And they were doing that thing when they were introducing the movie, kind of bigging up how like important it is and how clever it is and all this and that. And a lot of the times that can just be, guff. They're just saying things, but like this, it kind of feels like a truly important film to me. Like this is original. This is something only filmmaking can do. And there are moments from this that are seared into my brain, especially some of the music choices. You can tell what he learned in making Under the Skin is clearly passed on here, and I suppose it makes sense with it basically is a horror movie with that historical angle. But man, yeah, the use of the music and the way block color is used, the way implied violence is utilized, is something I love about the Kurosawa film Ran, where it's just implied violence can be so much more effective. I feel like Under the Skin, this is going to be something that's going to grow on me with each rewatch. Unfortunately, the angle that I was watching this from in the theater, there were balcony seats and they were extremely high up, so some of the subtitles and visuals are obscured for me in a way because it was just so uncomfortable to watch from that angle. And it's not like it's a long movie by any means. It's only an hour 45. It's exactly what it needs to be. But like, I'm aching to see this again. It just seems so well researched. It seemed like they really were respectful with the subject matter, so delicate. It's a genius artistic idea, executed to perfection, with the kind of ending that's it's not gonna leave you. This film's gonna haunt you. I mean, I'm still thinking about it now. It's haunting. If you could only watch one thing from this whole video, I'd definitely recommend to keep this one at the top of your list. Like, you just need to see this. It's not something you're going to see anywhere else. This is unique, original. It might take a little minute for you to figure out what it's going for, but once it clicks, it is horrifying. It is, yeah, this is incredible stuff. This is very, very impressive. I think I gave it 4.5 stars right now, but I could easily bump this up on rewatch just because, I don't know, just the nature of the way I saw it and how tired I was or whatever. Yeah, I cannot wait to see this again and see what the conversation around this film is like, because, wow. So I'm going to leave it there. I've been going way too long on this. Let me know what you're excited for, what sounds interesting to you, what you think you might differ with me on. Had an awesome time at TIFF. Yeah, thanks for watching.